Florida State needs a big-time quarterback commitment for the class of 2026. But right now, I have major concerns.
You are Locked On Seminoles, your daily podcast on the Florida State Seminoles. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome back into Locked On Seminoles. I am your host, Brian Smith, longtime college football recruiting analyst and writer. Thank you for making Locked On Seminoles your first listen each and every day. Truly appreciate you stopping in to talk some Noles with me. Today's show is brought to you by our friends over at Nissan and the all-new 2025 Nissan Armada. Stay with us for the Armada Team of the Week later on in the episode. Florida State quarterback recruiting was trending in the right direction, but right now I'm not feeling so warm and fuzzy. There are major concerns for the Florida State Seminoles with quarterback recruiting, and I'm going to break down 4 of the prospects involved, and there could always be somebody else, and in this landscape, certainly change is possible. Let's just begin at the top with why I think this is a very important year for Florida State quarterback recruiting. You have a guy, Thomas Castellanos, fits the offense to a T, but he's a senior. One and done out of the transfer portal. He'll do well. I have no doubt. Gus Malzahn's offense, he is absolutely the right kind of player to operate it. But he's still one and done. Do we really think there's anybody else on the roster that is ready to take the reins in 2026, a year that Florida State truly needs to make a major upgrade with their win-loss record? I think they'll win about 7 games this year. Maybe they win more, but they're not a national title contender. In 26, they got to make noise. Is there somebody currently on the roster that you feel good about definitively? Like there's proven reason to feel that way. Not on high school production, but what they've done on the field. Of course, the answer is no. So you need to do 2 things. Number 1, probably get a portal player. And B, you still need to stock the cupboard with really good players out of the high school ranks. Give yourself as many options as possible. We'll see about the portal after this next season. But for now, the concern is recruiting. The guy that I thought for the longest time would end up at Florida State looks like Ole Miss is the team to beat now. That is Landon Duckworth out of Jackson, Alabama. He doesn't live that far from Mobile, and it's a kid that just fits Gus Malzahn's offense to a T. But he also can run a lot of different offenses because he can throw it from the pocket. He can be a dynamic player on the run. To be honest, Duckworth could play receiver, DB, quarterback, whatever. He's just a gifted young man. But Lane Kiffin is in his ear, and I get it. He's produced a lot of talented quarterbacks. That's a guy that's going to get a lot of play if he makes a phone call to a signal caller. Duckworth happens to be looking at it pretty hard. So with Duckworth right now, just for the official visit's sake, he's got Georgia, May 30th. That's always a school you got to watch out for. It's not like Georgia's known for quarterbacks, but it's still Georgia. South Carolina, where he was previously committed, and they have UGNIL. That is June 6th. Florida State, June 13th. And then Ole Miss gets the last official visit with Lane Kiffin in Oxford, June 20th. I'm concerned about that one because I thought that was the best bet. Everything I've heard, though, here recently, whether it's articles or talking to a few people that I know in the recruiting industry, watch out for Ole Miss. So we'll see how it goes. There's still a long way. And if Florida State doesn't get him back on campus this spring before his OV, I'll feel even worse about it. Next up, a kid that has recently been to Florida State. This is where it gets really interesting, and the interweb of quarterback recruits at the upper echelon of the P4 level starts to intertwine. Bowe Bentley out of Salina, Texas, just north of Dallas, electric recruit. Talked about him several times here on Locked On Seminoles for good reason. This is a young man, over 40 touchdowns, over 4,000 yards of offense, state championship as a junior. He knows what he's doing. He's only played 1 year and he won a state title in Texas. That's a really good sign. The issue is, looks like Oklahoma is prioritizing him, and he lives roughly 3 hours from Norman. That's going to be hard to pass up. And rumor is that's the school that he really likes kind of growing up. That makes it even harder. Ohio State's involved. Georgia's involved. LSU's involved. Florida State's involved. But watch out for Oklahoma. And that's where this really gets weird. Oklahoma has a commitment from Jaden O'Neal, originally from California. He moved to Mustang, Oklahoma, but then the Sooners have also changed their offensive coordinator. Yeah, he's not as keen on O'Neal from what it looks like, and he prefers Bentley. We'll see. Florida State is now involved with O'Neal, but he's a little bit more of a pocket passer, whereas in the case of Duckworth, total athlete who can throw it. And in the case of Bentley, another guy that can really move, and he can throw it as well. O'Neal can move, but not in the same way, and he's not a pure RPO guy that's going to go get you 80. He's not going to bust it open like Jordan Travis. So 2 questions. Number 1, is he done with Oklahoma? Because it looks like they're kind of slowly moving away from him. It's an awkward situation. And B, does he fit what Florida State plans to run in the future? Because based on what Gus Malzahn has operated in the past, and I've covered Gus when he was at UCF, I don't think so. He can operate it, but not in the full capacity of what he wants to do. So, once again, is Florida State transitioning at all for their future offense? I don't know. If they do, I'm not sure what it would be, but I do know the following. I've seen Jaden O'Neal a couple of different times. I saw him throw it all over the place in South Florida for the Battle Miami tournament. That's the way it's supposed to look. And I also saw him last year at Future 50, the Under Armour event for underclassmen held at IMG Academy, and he looked fantastic. In the pocket or on the roll, Jaden O'Neal is the kind of quarterback that looks like an NFL-style player. 6'3", 200 pounds, great kid, very well-spoken. He'd represent any program well. That's the kind of guy you want around. But, again, does he fit? What are they trying to do? So I'm curious to see where he visits all the way through spring before those OVs start. His recruitment is impacted by others and vice versa. The interweb that it's included with O'Neal is absolutely wild. Finally, and this is the one that I didn't see at all, but Florida State's reportedly involved, and I've heard this multiple times. They're at least trying to be involved. How much, I don't know, because I haven't asked the young man himself. Bell. He's committed to Texas. He's from American Heritage. He's been committed to the Horns for a long time. As long as Sark and the main guys that have recruited him stay in Austin, has made it pretty clear that he's going to stick with the Horns. But you never know. He's very similar to O'Neal in playing style. Which one's more athletic? I think you could flip a coin, 6 one way, half dozen the other. But again, he's more of a pro style. He'll move outside the pocket and throw. He could run some RPO, but he's best behind the center and the lineman, tossing the pigskin down the field. Would he fit Florida State's offense? I don't know what they're going to run in the future or if they have any ideas of adapting in general. If not, I think they still need to find a mobile quarterback regardless of where that young man is from. So again, I have some concerns about Florida State quarterback recruiting, and let me finish it off by saying this. They don't need a high school quarterback. They need a high school quarterback and a portal quarterback after this next year. There's a bridge gap. Barring something unforeseen, right now I don't trust the current roster behind Thomas Castellanos to lead Florida State in 2026. That's just my opinion. May not be a very popular one, but there's nothing for me to say otherwise because I want definitive, proven, positive results, preferably at the P4 level for the quarterback for FSU next year. That's just not on the roster other than Castellanos. So with him leaving, they need a guy out of the portal. Also, do not completely take away the option of a junior college quarterback. That's just like a portal guy. You never know. And I guess it's always possible, although unlikely, if you do get a really good high school quarterback, Steve Bell, Jaden O'Neal, whoever it is, they could end up starting by the end of the year. That's not going to be the first time that's happened. But right now, overall, I am definitely concerned about Florida State's quarterback recruiting, and there's a lot of reasons for it. Hopefully that gets cleared up here in the next month or so, and they do have official visits with a lot of these guys. So we'll see how that goes. Next up, I do have some good recruiting news because Florida State is added to their official visit list. That's next here on Locked On Seminoles. The Armada Team of the Week is brought to you by our friends at Nissan and the all-new 2025 Nissan Armada. Each week, our Locked On College basketball experts are picking one team that stands apart. From top-seeded stars to the unexpected upsets, these guys showcase the strength and sheer power needed to push their team forward. This week's Armada and clear-cut team of the week, the Arkansas Razorbacks. Despite losing their first 5 SEC games, Coach Cal's Hogs fought their way through the most rugged conference in college basketball to not only make the tournament, but knock off back-to-back national champion and Hall of Fame coaches en route to the Sweet 16. They accomplished this without their second leading scorer and also without their leading scorer and rebounder so far in the tournament. So this is a team to be reckoned with. When it comes to the Nissan Armada, they say go forth and conquer, and that's exactly what the Arkansas Razorbacks have done here. It's clear that our team of the week is out here ready to conquer the road ahead with confidence, just like you can in the all-new Nissan Armada or any of the Nissan's outstanding vehicles. Take the Nissan Armada, Rogue, or Pathfinder, and go find your next big adventure. ShopUSA.com. Florida State recruiting isn't all on the downside here. The good news is they have really built quite an official visit list from the beginning of the cycle all the way through the end of June. And it's a lot of fun to cover. As somebody that's followed recruiting for a long time, I'm like, okay, this is impressive. Kids from California to South Florida, FSU is involved. It's way different than what it's been under Norvell for the last several years. That's the good news. Wholeheartedly, forget the names I'm about to give you. The effort that's been placed into this is at a different level. I don't know who, what, when, where, why, or how, but you're not getting these kids to come to campus just randomly because the Georgias and Texases and Notre Dames and USCs all want these kids too. So Florida State is trending in the right direction overall. So no real rhyme or reason for the players here. This is just what I've gathered from different people. And to be honest with you, I'm just happy to be talking about some positivity with Florida State football. Cameron Wilson, a kid I've talked about several times on this show, saw him here just over a week ago at the Battle in the Trenches tournament in South Florida. He was fantastic, had multiple sacks against some big-time players. I think he's a guy that's trending upwards in terms of his rankings because he's earned it. But I thought he was going to go to Syracuse. Now, I didn't get this straight from him because I left him alone because I'd recently spoken to him at the tournament. I just watched, videoed, and all that. But right now, it looks like Florida State, based on 24/7 Noles and everybody that's reporting on it, Florida State made a huge impact on Cameron Wilson. Good deal. He just took an unofficial, and it went well. With him also coming back for an OB, that's a good sign. Watch out for Syracuse. I mean, Brandon Brown is a really, really good recruiter. That still hasn't changed. However, if FSU can find a way, maybe they can get him back on campus again before the end of spring, I'd feel even better. But you can never have enough edge rushers. He's 6'4", 210, and just plays so hard. The kid really wants it. Great young man. This is the kind of guy that Bowden would have loved. He's out of Southridge High School in Miami, famous public school league program. This fits the profile for how you elevate the FSU Noles long term. They used to build through these kind of guys that needed a year or so of development. It would be great if they could get him. Next up, a kid they also had at that same tournament, Xavier Payne. He had a good visit. He's been committed to Florida State for a long time. Penn State's a school to kind of watch. Georgia too, because he's probably going to take OBs to those schools. But Florida State had him on campus and it went well. Let's see if he cancels any visits or Xavier Payne continues on and takes all his trips. All you can do is keep recruiting him, and FSU certainly needs more big guys in the trenches. Payne's just a little over 315 pounds. Great kid, and I hope he finds his home, whether it's Florida State or somewhere else, and really enjoys it. But Florida State needs linemen, so let's see if they can keep him in the fold. Next, this is something that maybe it's a new trend that's really good for Florida State. Obviously, Amari and Landon last year at tight end probably caught the attention of a lot of players. They did well, played a ton, and produced. It's not often you see tight ends do much as freshmen at any P4 school, but they both did despite the fact that Florida State's passing game struggled mightily. Okay, that's good news. They get a tight end this past year out of Nebraska, of all places, somebody that's highly recruited. Plus, right now, Evan Jacobson. I did not see that coming, and I passed over it and should have mentioned it recently. He's a kid out of the state of Iowa that's a national recruit at tight end, visiting Florida State. Good for the Noles. June 16th is what he's scheduled to visit Florida State. I was surprised by that he's already locked that up. Auburn, June 13th. We'll see what happens, but getting a kid like that on campus is pretty unusual. Florida State has had very little success, even in the Bowden era with kids from the Midwest. That's a big time program or a big time get to get him on campus. Maybe that's the new tradition with Florida State. We'll see. Slot receiver. This is a famous battle. Florida State, Miami. Jason Lopez is the priority for the Miami Hurricanes at slot. He might be for Florida State as well. I know Miami really wants him. This kid's at Chaminade Madonna. He's a wide receiver that isn't just good. He's a player that makes people look bad. He's very well coached. He's very well motivated, and he's proven. He had 1,400 yards in South Florida last year playing against the elite competition. He's a real deal. He was also tremendous at Under Armour Miami. Right in front of my face, I watched him beat some really good DBs. Guys are going to play P4. Not many guys can stick with it. But Florida State has an OV with him. June 13th. Let's see what happens there. Maybe he thinks he can come in and change the Florida State program around. Who knows? He's been able to commit to Miami for a while. Kind of surprised he hasn't. If he gets all the way through Miami's spring game and doesn't commit to Mario Cristobal and the Canes, then we'll know that this is a true race. I need to see that first, but just keep Florida State in mind. Jason Lopez is a heck of a player. Also at wide receiver, in a different size, that's for sure, 6'3", Kayvon Conchero, Houston County, Warner Robins, Georgia. They need a big-bodied receiver in this class. Florida State recently has done well with those guys under Norvell, but you need one at least every other year that's truly a big guy that can go get those jump balls and is a red zone threat. 6'3" receivers? Absolutely. He's a kid that's highly coveted, and he's from an area that, in Warner Robins, that's just as football-centric as it gets. Love Central Florida kids, or Central Georgia kids. This guy's right in the middle of it. You can't find a town in America that's not more into it. All three of the high schools there, football means something. The community shuts down on Friday nights. They want to watch football. This is another player that got lined up for a visit. I'm curious to see if he sticks to his schedule and who else gets in on him. His film's pretty good, and he's got some upside to him. He's not completely filled out. He's a guy that could weigh 200 plus pounds in a couple of years. He's a little under 200 right now. But Conchero is a guy that Florida State's done a good job. They've done their own homework. You hear me talk about that a lot? Don't just go off lists. Recruit the schools you know and continue to find gems all over the place, regardless of the list. Florida State's done a good job with this staff. I really like that. Also, just as a reminder, I've mentioned this young man a bunch of times, but Samari Matthews had a good visit to FSU recently, and he's still set to visit Florida State this summer. He is the kind of guy that can be your linchpin in the secondary. Shut down, flat-out NFL-level corner long-term. He was 195 pounds, shredded like a boxer going into his junior year. I mean, the kid just works. He's out of the state of North Carolina, but South Carolina and Clemson and a whole bunch of other programs are after him. We'll see where he goes, but he's been to FSU multiple times now. This is a kid that Florida State has made some inroads with. With the DB coaches that FSU has, both good recruiters, Cooper, Sertan, it's going to be interesting to see what they can do. I really like him a lot. I think he's a top 100 player. And above all else, love guys that compete. Whether it's OT7 or any other event, Matthews is a guy that wants to get out there and go against the best. Love that kind of competitiveness. Carson Baker. This is a guy I didn't expect to talk about much. I thought he was going to be committed to Georgia by now. He plays at Langston Hughes. Really good player, really fast. In Florida State, I mean, they've been doing good at running back, especially from the state of Georgia. This is another kid from that direction, but right now, his official visit list doesn't include the Dogs. Let's see if they get on that list. Maybe he just doesn't want to go there, but he's got Clemson May 30th, Florida State June 6th, Ohio State June 13th, Texas A&M June 20th. Does he visit the Georgia Bulldogs officially? Maybe it's May 16th weekend or something like that. Maybe he throws them in a midweek visit, but he's a burner. He's a guy that can hit the home run and take it the distance. I don't know if Baker is a guy that Florida State is going to be able to get, but they're not dying at running back or anything. But anytime you can get a Langston Hughes kid that has the kind of home run speed he does, that's a good sign. Next up is the two players that I find really interesting that are visiting Florida State. This is a recent development. Madden Williams and Daniel Odom, both from St. John Bosco in California. It's in the Trinity League. It's one of the most famous programs in the country. They've been great for decades. And I also think this is the kind of just randomness that Florida State is known for in recruiting. Even under Bowden, they'd get somebody, or Chris Ricks was from the greater LA area. They'd get somebody out of California or New Jersey or somebody out of Minnesota, whatever. They get like one kid each and every year that just kind of was outside the normal recruiting footprint for the Florida State Seminoles. Maybe this year it's one of these guys. They're set up for official visits on June 6th. And right now, Madden's committed to the Texas A&M Aggies, while Odom's committed to the Oklahoma Sooners. Both of them could play multiple spots. I think receiver is where each would end up in college, but if they play DB or running back, these are Bosco kids. I don't count out anything, and both of them got a little bit of size. So we'll see. But at the same time, I love the fact that Florida State's trying to get into the Trinity League in LA. Elite competition. That's really good news. When we come back, we're going to talk a little bit more about what's going on with recruiting and also transition into a couple other topics here at Florida State. That is next on Locked On Seminoles. Get the supplies you need from the site made for the skilled trades. Supply House. Whether you're into plumbing, HVAC, or electrical work, Supply House is a reliable way to order products online. Their easy-to-use website is packed with helpful resources and the latest product information to help you get the job done right. Plus, with a complete inventory of over 200,000 parts from 400-plus top brands, you'll find exactly what you need delivered fast from coast to coast. Need help with an order? Supply House offers expert support and industry-leading service, so you'll always talk to a real person. And for the trade pros looking for that extra edge, their free TradeMaster program offers exclusive perks like a dedicated phone line, free shipping, and discounts on every order. Thousands of skilled professionals are already taking advantage. Now it's your turn. Join the TradeMaster program today at supplyhouse.com/TM and start ordering plumbing, HVAC, and electrical supplies with just a few clicks. Plus, use promo code SH5 for 5% off your first order. That's supplyhouse.com. Looking across Florida State recruiting, just a reminder, there's still a lot of visits unofficially the Noles are going to get over the next few weeks, a whole bunch. You got the spring showcase, and you've got all these private visits that are going to take place at the Prospect C campus. There are going to be some more randomness at the quarterback spot that I talked about extensively at the beginning of the show and everywhere else. And it's still, as I always say, follow the visits. I don't care which site reports it, but if somebody comes to campus, there's a better chance that they will eventually take an official visit to Florida State. And of course, that's where you get your players to commit more often than not. We've got a long way to go in spring ball, and there's a lot of information that's going to come out. Do not forget about that. I also want to bring up something that is unfortunate, but it could benefit Florida State. Troy Taylor was fired today from Stanford. The head coach is in an awkward situation because there are rumors that there was bullying going on in the Stanford football program. I'm going to leave it at that. That is not my bag. I'm not going to get into the legalese of that. But he has been relieved of his duties effective immediately, per former Stanford and Indianapolis Colts quarterback Andrew Luck, who's now the general manager at Stanford. So they're looking for a new coach. Maybe they go in-house, maybe they don't. But I do know a couple of things for sure. Stanford recruits down south, Georgia kids, North Carolina, Florida, etc. And of course, there are just random players on their roster that are good. How many are going to stay, though? Could one or more end up in Florida State via the portal, be released from their letter of intent? Absolutely. They got 18 kids coming in their recruiting class. They have a handful of kids that are like grad transfers. And then there's the roster itself. Florida State might benefit from that. You don't know. There's going to be a lot of phone calls to the state of California, hundreds and hundreds of them, out of all these P4 schools. Yeah, I know Stanford's not very good, but that doesn't mean they don't have individual talent. Just as an example, Bowe, the quarterback, maybe he's a guy that ends up going somewhere else. He was offered by a lot of schools. I'm not saying it's Florida State, but that's a kid that may not go to Stanford now. Who knows? Just keep that in mind. It's an unfortunate situation. I hate to see another ACC member struggling because of something so awkward, but I just report the news. Florida State football could benefit, and hopefully Stanford rebounds quickly and the kids get what they need, regardless if they stay in Palo Alto or not. We'll see. Finally, I just want to make a couple of notes on Florida State basketball. This is kind of interesting from the perspective of how things can change quickly in football. Well, it can even change faster in hoops. I'm learning this with Luke Laux now being the head coach. You got guys leaving the program, some guys that graduated, etc. But like, are they going to lose all these guys and it's really going to matter or not? I really don't know. All I'm saying is I'm looking at like Justin Thomas and Taylor Bowen, Chandler Jackson, etc. Some of these guys, started a game like Jackson started 27 games. Bowe started 28 games. It's a lot to replace, but Florida State is basically starting its program over. So I have 3 questions for the additions. I don't care if they're junior college players, transfer portal players, or these are guys that end up coming back. Like, how do these following 3 things fit together? Is Florida State going to field a roster next year, forget wins and losses, that has these following 3? Does it have speed and length? Does it have a point guard that is team first? This is something that I've steadfast with over 20 years. I used to be a college football junkie and basketball, not as much hoops as I used to be, but I still love basketball. If you do not have a dominant point guard with a team first mentality, pretty hard to do anything in a league like the ACC, and especially the tournament. And then finally, this is something Florida State need more of for years. Shooters. Where are the shooters? I'm sure Florida State fans will agree. Can they get some more shooters? For me to have more interest, and for many of you, that's something that Luke Laux is going to have to find. Point guard, shooters, and then just size and length. That's part of development. That's his job. But the shoot, got to put the ball in the bucket, man. If you want to really generate interest in the program, that's something they're going to have to do. Thank you once again for making Locked On Seminoles your first listen each and every day. Truly appreciate you stopping in to talk some Noles with me. Hit that like button, that notification bell, and share this podcast. We will see you again soon.